welcome back, knitters. I'm excited that today we're going to cast on block number 1 of our block of the month knit along. This is a long-term knit along, as I mentioned before. If you haven't yet had a chance to watch the prep video, I'll link that down below. So head over and do that. So hopefully you've swatched and you've got engaged and you're ready to cast on. Now, this video is geared more toward the newer knitter. So if you're experienced, I will put some notes down below in the description with timestamps so you can skip ahead if you want to parts that might be more relevant to you if you're a more experienced knitter. Okay, here we go. I'm just finishing up my cast on. We're doing the long tail cast on. If you need some help with that, I do have a video that goes over that more in detail, and I'll put a link in the upper right hand corner. So I would suggest that you double check your cast on. Make sure that you have the required 57. I always double or even triple count it just because I haven't before, and then I've realized I was one off, and I've already knitted a couple of inches, and you know, that was a big drag because then I had to frog it back and do it over. Now I'm just going to knit the first 4 rows as indicated by the pattern, straight up knitting every row, and so that will create a couple of garter stitch ridges. And then we'll continue with row number 5, which will be on the wrong side of our work. So if you have a way to designate right side and wrong side, you might want to go look for a marker that has one of those lobster claws that you can attach to the right side if you need help remembering that, but it will become very clear very soon which is the right side and the wrong side of your work. The pattern indicates that row 5 is going to be beginning on the wrong side. So that threw me off a little bit at first because normally for me the right side is where my tail is. So if you want to get that row marker to designate that, you certainly could. But we're going to start off just knitting 1 and then purl 1, knit 1 all the way across. And then I believe rows 6 through 9 are also just garter stitch. I finished row 9, and you can see where we had row 5 with the alternating knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. That made a nice texture row in between, kind of broke up the garter stitch. I think that looks pretty cool. So now I'm ready for the increase round. So if you look back to the very last page of the pattern, you'll find the key where it shows how the pattern author would prefer that we do the make one. Now normally I do my own thing, but this time I am not. I'm going to go ahead and do it as written. Imagine that in the pattern. So make one indicates that pick up the horizontal strand between the stitch just worked and the next one from front to back. We're going to knit 1, make 1. Okay, so to make 1, we pick up this horizontal right here from front to back and put it on the left-hand needle. Knit this stitch through the back, and then so we're going to knit that through the back loop. And that provides a twist to help close up any gap that might occur there. All right, then we're going to knit the next stitch. Okay, knit 1, make 1, knit twice. So we want to knit another. Okay, so now we've done a knit 1, that's our make 1. Knit 2, make 1, 27 times. So we're going to knit 2, make 1, 27 times. So we want to do that total. So there's our first knit 1 and the make 1. So those don't count in the 27. So this is the first group of 3 here that's 27. So I would just, you know, do a little hash marks on a piece of paper. You'll be able to count though, I'm sure. And then when you get to the end, you're only going to have 3 stitches left. So you'll be able to count that. So that's our next make 1. So we're going to knit 2, make 1 all the way across. 2. Now I do a little maneuver, like if I'm having trouble poking my right needle in behind there, I kind of do this little thing where I go underneath like this and then just kind of switch around. Kind of like that, really. Because sometimes it's really difficult to get your needle inside the back portion of that horizontal bar. So pick that up, and sometimes it's hard to poke in right there. So I just do this little roll about like that. Okay, I'll show you that one more time. So pick up the horizontal bar between, being careful not to split. And if your work is loose enough that you can just go ahead and slide your needle right in there, that's great. But if you're a new knitter and you're knitting a little tight, you can just go underneath here and kind of roll your needles around each other like that and be able to get into the back portion of that bar that you picked up. So when you're done going all the way across with knit 2, make 1, knit 2, make 1, you should have a total of 86 stitches. And now we're ready to move on. Beginning on the wrong side row, work rows 1 through 16 of the chart. All right, we're ready to begin chart number 1. Now, a few things to note if you're new to chart reading. Because we're working a flat block and we're going back and forth like this, we're going to read our chart in a similar way. So when you knit in flat back and forth, you go up and over and up and over and up and over. Whereas when you knit in the round, you'd go from right to left and right to left and right to left. So one thing to keep in mind here on your key to chart number 1 is down here at the bottom, it plainly tells you knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side, purl on the right side, knit on the wrong side. So make sure you read your notes. Now, if you'll notice too, the cables only occur on the even numbered rows, which are where you're going to be going from right to left. All right, so I hope that makes sense. We're starting our chart on the wrong side, and the reason for that is we want to be able to have the right side of our work facing us when we do the cables. Taking notice of our chart notes, we are beginning on the wrong side. So we're going to begin at letter D and work back across this way because we're on the back side, what will become the wrong side or the back side of our work. So since we know that dots on the wrong side are knits and the spaces are purls, we're going to start here and we're going to knit 3, purl 2. And then we're going to repeat this section in between here, in between C and D, until we have 9 stitches left. So that's going to be a knit 4, purl 2. Whoops, I have my yarn on the wrong side here. Okay, knit 4, purl 2. Knit 4, purl 2, and we're going to continue that all the way across until we have 9 stitches left, and then we'll knit the last 9. I can tell that I have about 9 stitches left, so I'm going to just stop and make sure. Yep. Okay, so I'm here between B and A, and I'm going to just knit these last 9 before I turn my work and move my tape and see what's next for row 2 of the chart, which will be the right side of our work. Okay, I like to put my tape down right above the work I'm on, but you know, above or below, you do what works for you. I'm going to turn my work around, and now I'm going to read it in the way that's probably most comfortable for you and me and everyone else, which is now I'm on the right side, so that means that on the right side, the blank squares are knitted and the dots are purled. So this does require some attention to detail and some care to not mess things up. And so maybe it's not Netflix knitting right away, but there's my knit the first knit, and then I'm going to purl 6. Okay, and now we're going to be confronted with our first cable stitch. So if you're going to look back at your key, or look down here at your key, I like how the author of the pattern has color-coded the cables. So the blue one says, slip 2 stitches onto a cable needle and hold in the back. So I'm going to show you how to do that the traditional way, and then I will also upload a separate video that shows how you can choose to cable without a cable needle if you'd like. Now for cable needles, I just bought this little 3-pack of wooden ones. I really like these. There's different sizes, and you can see how these are tapered down toward the middle. So I'm going to choose this middle size. Because the big one might be a little bigger than I'd like. You don't really want to pick a cable needle that is larger than the needles that you're using in your work. Alternatively, you could also choose a double-pointed needle that's the same size or maybe slightly smaller than what you're using. So that's completely personal preference. So we're going to start by slipping 2 stitches to the cable needle, and always slip as if to purl unless the pattern indicates otherwise. And it says hold to the back. So we're just simply going to let that fall off to the back. We're going to knit 2 from the next 2 stitches off of there. And then purl 2 from the cable needle. So slide those stitches back to the right end of your cable needle and just purl those off. So all we've done is traded places with 2 stitches. Traded places with 2 other stitches. So when you learn to read your knitting, you can see that the predominant way that this cable goes is to the right. You've crossed over 2 stitches and made them veer off to the right. you know that the purl stitches are what's in the background because it gives you a little hint there with that dot. Now we're going to purl the next 2 stitches and then perform the same cable maneuver. So 2 stitches. Now we're going to slip 2 off on the cable needle, slipping as if to purl. Let those hang out in the back. Knit the next 2. The other reason that you know that is that these are knitted, and this is the right side of my work, or the work that's going to show, or the side that would be the right side as opposed to the wrong side. And I know that I'm going to purl the next 2 off because they were purl stitches when I slipped them. Now there are occasions where you're going to do the opposite, but most of the time you're going to continue with whatever direction or whatever type of stitch it was when you slipped it. Now these other, see, I like to just kind of have this hang out here. Sometimes I tuck it behind my ear, but these are lightweight and they're just easy to tuck in between your fingers there to hold them, to hang on to them. Now we are going to repeat those 2 cables between the 2 red lines for a number of stitches until we only have 3 left. So if you'll notice, that is a little bit confusing. You have the red line here and the red line here, and they want you to repeat between. So if you were to look at this half of the cable and this half of the cable, you're just going to continue this same blue cable maneuver with 2 purls in between. You're going to repeat that until you get to only 3 stitches left. All right, I'll put my cable needle down for a moment and show you how I would perform the right leaning cable without a cable needle. So now I will warn you though, this is difficult to do if you're a brand new knitter and you knit tightly, because you're going to be trying to switch places with these 2 stitches and these 2. You're just twisting them, you're swapping places with them. And if you drop one, it is not that easy to pick it up and weave it back through. Now right now it wouldn't be that difficult because we just have knits and purls down here. But if you were doing this, say, you know, up here a ways on maybe your 3rd or 4th repeat of this chart and you dropped one, it's not that easy to fish it, you know, weave it back up with a crochet hook and recover that. So unless you knit relatively loosely or you're okay with frogging, I might not risk it if I were you. Okay, so normally we would slip these 2 off and put them on a cable needle in the back. But instead, I'm going to tuck my right hand needle in under these 2 stitches. Now these are the ones that I want to bring over to the right. Then I'm going to take my left index finger and pinch these 2 purl stitches really hard against my right hand needle so that as I slip my left needle out, they're not going to fall down and go anywhere. Okay, so pinch, 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 get my left needle out. Then I'm going to go back and get my left needle poked inside these 2 and recovered. And there we go, we've swapped. Now we're switching, and I'm going to put these back on the left hand needle so then I can knit them the way I'm supposed to. Okay, so I'm going to knit those 2 now. And then I'm going to purl the ones that were held in the back. Okay, I'll show you that again in just a moment. So now I'm going to purl these next 2 as indicated in the pattern. Okay, we're going to do, and you can see where we did that. There's our cable. Okay, let's show you that again. These 2 purl stitches are the ones that I'm going to take off after I get these 2 knit ones to the right. So I want to slip these off, pull these over, and get those back on. Okay, let me tell you that again. I'm going to slip these knit stitches off. Well, I'm going to slip these off first, pull these over, and put those purl ones back on. So again, before I slide out my left needle, I'm going to pinch really hard with my index finger. Or you can also just let go of your yarn right here, and you can just grab them. You can pinch them right here and hold on to them. Slide your left needle out, all the way out. Now that came off onto the right needle, and that's okay. Now I'm going to go and put this back on here and put the 2nd purl stitch back on like that, okay? And now I'll pull those knit stitches over to the right and replace them on the left-hand needle. So all I've done is swap positions with those 2 sets of stitches, okay? Okay. I've completed all the cables all the way across, and now I just have the 3 stitches left, so I'm going to purl the last 2.
and knit that last one. All right. Now, normally, when you're doing a lot of intensive cabling, the in-between rounds will be what I like to call resting rounds, where it's pretty well just straight up knit the knits and purl the purls, and that is the case here. So keep in mind it's opposite. Now we're on a wrong side row, or an odd numbered row, so we're going to be going back the other direction. Knit the dots and purl the blank spaces. But you'll notice it's pretty much just knit the knits and purl the purls on the way back, because when you turn your work over and you look, what were dots on the other side now are knits because you're on the back side. So on the way back, you're gonna knit the knits and purl the purls and just carry on with the status quo, reading your knitting as you go across. We're back to row 4 now, and I wanted to show you, this is really starting to shape up. You can start to see the cables that are leaning across, and that's going to continue. They'll be offset just a little bit on row 4, and they'll continue to travel to the right until we get up here, and then they'll travel to the left. So that's going to be really kind of a wavy, interesting thing to see happen. So continue on in that same way, and I'll show you what it looks like after we get about halfway through the chart. I'm partially through row 10 now, and you can see that as the cables have traveled across from left to right, as we've been trading places with columns of 2 stitches, the knit stitches are traveling across a background of purl stitches, so it really makes them pop out and makes them, they feel raised, so that's really kind of dramatic and cool. So now that I'm on row 10, we're doing the cables and we're switching places with everything going the other direction. And as we come up to a cable, if you're using your cable needle for the left leaning 2x2 cable, you're just going to slip your cable needle in and hold this to the front. So then we can go ahead and purl off the next 2 stitches in the background, in that purling background. Then you're simply going to carefully pull these over to the left and knit those right off. And then simply purl the next 2, and then we'll do the same thing. All right, if you wanted to perform this 2x2 left cable cross without a cable needle, you'll take your right hand needle and go in underneath those 2 purl stitches in the back. So you have to be careful to go actually in underneath that right there and the next one, okay, so that you don't lose them. Then you're going to take your thumb and push those down and pinch them so that you don't lose those stitches either. So work that down towards the tip. Hurry and get that left needle out, switch back around, and catch those 2 before you lose them. Okay, so we're just swapping places with those sets of 2 stitches, but then we still have to actually work them. So then we'll purl those 2 and knit the next 2. And that's how I do that maneuver without a cable needle. I'll show you one more time. Okay, we're going to purl our next 2 that are in the middle. Okay, again, we're going to leave this coming off the front, the yarn coming off the front of those purl stitches, because our next 2 that we're going to actually work next after we get everything traded places with are these 2 right here. So we're going to leave the yarn coming off the front. Okay, go in from the back underneath and try to catch those 2 stitches. Pinch those knit stitches with your thumb so they don't drop down and you don't lose them. And then hurry and take your left hand needle out and around the front. Okay, now what's happened here is a common problem where I didn't get this knit stitch all the way off my right hand needle. So I'm gonna have to put those back and have a do-over. I didn't actually get that one all the way released. So we're going to have to put everything back here for a second and try that over again. Now this one I accidentally twisted, so I'll put that back too. Okay. So again, we're going to go in from the back underneath those 2 purl stitches. Push those down real hard with my thumb so I don't drop them. Swing the left needle around to the front and back into those knit stitches. Okay. A little bit risky if you're a tight knitter. Yeah. I find it to be a little stressful if the cables are tight, or if I'm doing more than 2 stitches. I probably wouldn't recommend that. I might just play it safe and stick with using a cable needle. I've worked through the chart 4.5 times actually, not quite half. 4 full repeats of the chart, and then rows 1 through 5, ending on the wrong side row here. So I'm ready to start back on the right side row, and then going to do a decreasing row to get rid of all those 20 some odd extra stitches that we added in order to obtain the cables. When you do all that crisscrossing, cables tend to eat up more yarn, so that's why they have you increase. If we hadn't increased all those stitches back here in the beginning, when we increased up to whatever it was, 86, our whole piece would have been much thinner in the middle, and it kind of would have been hourglass shaped then. So we don't want that. So now we need to decrease back down to our original 57 cast on. All right, so the decrease row begins with a knit 2 together, but being careful not to split the stitch. I've got a little section right there that is has a little strand that's giving me trouble. And then in parentheses there, knit 1, knit 2 together, and repeat that 28 times all the way across. Okay, now we're just going to turn our work and repeat rows 1 through 9 from the beginning of the chart, and then we'll be ready to bind off block 1. Looking good. I'm pretty pleased with how this first block has gone. Now I'm just ready to bind off knitwise. I'm just going to do the regular standard bind off where you knit the first one, knit the second one, and then go underneath the first stitch and pull it right on over the second loosely. And then I tug a little extra through that loop just to make sure it's big enough to not be tight. We want a stretchy, loose bind off that's neat. You don't want it loose and sloppy, but you don't want it super tight, and you don't want to make your edge puckered either. So this just creates a nice clean bind off that's tidy. I've done the bind off all the way down to the end. That's made a nice tidy edge. So I'm at my last 2 stitches, and all I'm going to do here is grab the second one, pull it over the first, same as before, and then I'm just going to trim this off and pull it right through. All right. Okay, so there is a little bit of a loop there, and that seems a little sloppy. I'm just going to give it a tug. You can take this edge and weave it down the side. We'll go over how to attach everything and how we're going to sew it together. I'm going to go ahead and measure this, make sure that it's 12 by 12, and I'm going to block it so that it dries to the correct size. I'm pretty pleased with this first block overall. I'm adding some pins here in the middle because I have ornery cats, and they will try to lay on it and do that thing that cats do like this, and I've had them do that before, and they've actually snagged stitches and pulled them up. So hopefully if I add pins to the middle, it will become less attractive as a kitty butt mat.
Okay, I'm pleased with how that turned out. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial video for block number 1, and that you'll join us the first week of every month coming up for the rest of the blocks. Okay, the other thing I wanted to note real quick is that I will have some videos interspersed with these on how to go about blocking your squares and how I intend to store mine, since we'll have several months yet until we're ready to put anything together. So, all right, watch for that. As always, I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe if you're inclined, and thanks for being here.